Alrighty. Hello. I'm interested in going through something tonight. I don't know how long this will take. Probably not terribly long, but I wanted to go over. I read through the Esther story today, and I'm interested in the parallel with um, what's going on now. And I get this from the fact that on Purim this year, which was March 3rd, there was a blood moon over America, which means a lunar eclipse. When there's a full moon, um, and the shadow of the Earth cuts it off, then there's the lunar eclipse between it and the sun. So we had one of those blood moons, and it turns red because of the way the light reflects around the edges of the Earth onto the blocked out moon by the shadow of the Earth, and it looks it covers it in a red looking. It looks like blood. Um, so that happened on March 3rd, like early morning March 3rd, and that was like 2 days after we started the war with Iran. And then it's making a lot of people think of, since that was Purim, that's the holiday that remembers what happened with Esther and the king of Persia. And so you have Purim, a story with Esther and the king of Persia, and now we go to war on Purim, basically. And the same day, there's a blood moon when that war starts, within a couple of days of the war starting, which always indicates, right, like something significant biblically, especially if we're in the end times. So it's just like a little relationship I want to look at today. I'm going to kind of go through, I don't think I'm going to read every single word, but I'm going to start reading through it and kind of go over the highlights and why I think the story of Esther relates directly with what we're seeing now because of this relationship that I'm seeing with Israel and Iran, and the people of Iran, and particularly the Shah. So if you don't know, the IRGC, which is the Iranian Republic Guard Corps, I think, they are the regime that is the Shia mullahs that run Iran. And then they have underneath them, like a governmental structure, the parliament and the prime minister, who don't really have the power. It's the mullahs that do. And they don't represent the will of the people. They took over in 1979, right? From the Shah, and they kind of kicked the Shah out. I think the CIA had something to do with that too. It's kind of a problem we created. And so now we got to kind of fix it. And that's what we're doing now, because this regime's horrible and it's not what the people want. 70-80% of the people don't even, they're either some other religion or not religious at all, but they're not wanting what they got right now. So keep that in mind. Like, the Iranian people are different than the Iranian government, and Israel is trying to help out the Iranian people. I know it's for their own benefit too, because no doubt Iran is funding proxy wars against Israel, but it is a relationship right now that's beneficial to both. And this is what we see kind of here. So before I start reading this, I want to set up the history. So in 586 BC, that's when Nebuchadnezzar invaded the southern kingdom of Judah and took captive. What's interesting is I have some slides that I'm making for another reason, but I have a timeline on it, so I'm not gonna go through these formally. But I want to find my timeline. Where is it? Okay, this will work. This is kind of what I'm talking about, the history of Esther. But the timeline I want to show is, you have Judah fall around 586 BC, and that's when Jeremiah, Daniel, Ezekiel happen. And then they get taken off into Babylon. And then the Babylonians in 536 BC are taken over by the Persian Empire. And Cyrus the Persian allows for the Jews to go back to Israel, back to Judah. They were in captivity in Babylon for 70 years. That's about a 70-year period that they were in captivity. And so they go back to, well, Cyrus the Persian allows them to go back, but most of them had either died off. It's been 70 years, and then like the original captives had died off, but had families and like community. So the kids and their kids had a new life established in this foreign country, and they didn't want to go back to Judah, so they stayed where they were. And then so they have this growing Jewish population in Babylon, modern day Persian area, up into Afghanistan because of the. I wonder if I can find a good map. Let's try. 1 second. Map of let's look at images. Where's this one? All right. So you've got like they get taken off into captivity into this area, and then they they all this was the Babylonian Empire. All this was the Babylonian Empire, and so they were just put all in it when they were taken captive in 586 BC. And only a fraction of them decide to go back when Cyrus allows them to go back in 536. The rest of them stay here and grow, and they're there long term. And then by 478 is when this story happens, in 478. So that would be on this thing, kind of closer to here. And this is where it's got Esther here on this little thing. It's about 478 BC, going forward in time. So the Persian Empire is controlling the area. And then I want to look at another map of the Persian in particular. On a map. Well, that's the ancient city of Susa. I wonder if this shows it. Yeah. This is where this happens, okay? So it's in modern day Iran, Susa. It's in modern day Iran. So you'll see, this is the it's got here, Iraq. But, anyway, so this is where the story takes place, and the time it is about, a little over 100 years after the allowance to go back to the land happened. So we've got the story. That's the context, and the king involved is the king Ahasuerus, i.e., the Shah. Let's call him Shah, because that's what king means in Farsi. And it's also known as Xerxes the First. You'll see here. Something like that. Yeah, so there's the same guy, which the text calls Ahasuerus. It's Xerxes the First. Persian king Xerxes thought to be biblical Ahasuerus. So just to know the time frame we're dealing with. So back to the book. So I'll start reading through it, and I'll tell you my parallels. But that's kind of what we're talking about. She's in the ancient world of modern day Iran, ancient Persia. So it happened in the days of Xerxes the First, or Ahasuerus. The Ahasuerus, he reigned from India to Kush over 127 provinces. This is kind of what helps identify who this is. In those days, as King Ahasuerus sat on his royal throne and was at the citadel in Susa, which I showed a picture of. It was like right around here. I don't know if that's what that's showing. It's probably renamed. I think that was Susa. So in the third year of his reign, he held a banquet for all his officials in attendance, the army officers of Persia and Media, the nobles, and the officials of his province in his presence. At that time, he displayed the riches of his royal glory and the splendor of his great majesty for 180 days. So some big banquet, all about him. Um, then, when days were finished, he held another banquet lasting 7 days for all those who were present at the citadel in Susa, from the greatest to the least. In the courtyard of the garden of the king's palace, there were curtains of fine white and violet linen, held by cords of fine purple linen or silver, etc., etc. I want to hit the high points here. And then Queen Vashti, which is his queen at the time. It's not the same person as Esther, but she also held a banquet for the women in the palace, which belonged to King Ahasuerus. On the seventh day, when the heart of the king was cheerful with wine, so he's kind of drunk, he ordered these guys, which were his eunuchs. His 7 eunuchs. The eunuchs had their testicles cut off so that they would not mess with the king's wives. But they would guard them. So they were men that had their testicles cut off, that had no sexual drive to do anything, and therefore they felt like they could trust them, and then they would guard their women. 7 eunuchs served in the presence of the king to bring Queen Vashti before the king. So he ordered them to bring her for the king with her royal turban in order to display her beauty to the people. He wanted to show her off. But she refused to come at the king's order delivered by the eunuchs. So the king became angry. He's mad. So according to Persian law, people are supposed to obey him, obviously. And in the presence of the king, the other officials, one of his eunuchs said, Queen Vashti is wrong, not only the king, but also the officials and all the peoples who are in all the provinces of the king. For the queen's conduct will become known to all the women, and they'll do that to their husbands. And the same that they did to you. So this is like a shame, and this is embarrassing, man. But she didn't come when you asked her to. And this day, the wives, the officials of Persian media who have heard about the queen's conduct, they're going to talk about it to all the king's officials. There'll be plenty of contempt and anger. If it pleases the king, let a royal edict be issued for him, and let it be written in the laws of Persia and Media, so that it cannot be repealed, that Vashti may not come into the presence of the king, and let the king give her the royal position to another who is more worthy. So he's going to replace her. She's not going to be queen anymore, because she wouldn't come right when he asked her to. And then when the edict goes out, everyone will know how great it is. And all the women will give honor to their husbands again, great and small. So that makes him feel better. And so the king went with what this guy told him to do. So that's the setup here, okay? So we'll go to chapter 2. So his anger subsided, and he decided, let's see, he decided he's going to pick a new queen, basically. So they went through this process of bringing every beautiful young virgin to the citadel of Susan, to his harem that was already there, and to the custody of one of his eunuchs, who was in charge of the women, and let their cosmetics be given to them. Then let the young woman who pleased the king be brought in place of Vashti. So he's going with that. Now there was a Jew at the citadel in Susa whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjaminite. But he's like, of course, the southern kingdom of Judah had 2 tribes, Judah, of which it's named after, and Benjamin. So of course that's who's going to be. You're either going to be from Judah or Benjamin if you're taken in that captivity. So that's who's going to be there. Makes sense. So like, look at that's a long line of like 100 years of generations there. So I guess Kish, who had been taken from Jerusalem when the exiles who had deported by Nebuchadnezzar. So that's in 586 BC. He was the guardian to Hadassah. That's her actual name, which I kind of like better than Esther. Esther's name is Hadassah. So Esther's probably the name she took on there, so she wouldn't be identified. No one knew she's a Jew. Okay, so Esther's kind of her code name, or her name to disguise her Jewishness. Hadassah's her name. So Mordecai is the guardian to Hadassah. Mordecai is the guardian of Hadassah. That is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had no father or mother. Uncle's daughter, I think that means they're cousins. Now the young woman was a beautiful form and face, and when her father and mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter. He was an older cousin. So it came about when the command and decree of the king was heard, and many young ladies were gathered to Susa into the custody of the eunuch, that Esther was taken to the king's palace, who was in charge of the women. Now the young lady pleased him, and he found favor with her. So he quickly provided her with the cosmetics and food. This is this guy. This guy said, okay, she's legit, this eunuch. And so we're going to get her the cosmetics and whatnot, give her some attendance, and transfer her and her attendants to the best place in the harem. So he's putting her like number one. He wants her to get priority because he thinks she's the best. Esther did not reveal her people or her kindred because Mordecai had instructed her that she was not to reveal them. And every day Mordecai walked back and forth from the courtyard of the harem to learn how Esther was and what was happening to her. Now, when the turn came for each young woman to go into the king after the end of her 12 months under the regulations for the women, for there's beauty treatment going on, 6 months with oil of myrrh and 6 months of balsam oil, and the cosmetics for women. The young women go into the king in this way. They got prepared for like 12 months with oils and myrrh and all sorts of oils and whatnot. So whatever, sounds like a med spa of the day. The young woman would go into the king this way. Anything that she desired was given to her to take with her from the harem to the king's palace. In the evening, she would enter. In the morning, she would return to the second harem, to the custody of this guy, another eunuch, who was in charge of the concubines. She wouldn't go to the king unless the king delighted in her, and she was summoned. Obviously, he's trying him out sexually. That's what it looks like is going on there. Now, when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her as his daughter, came into the king, she did not request anything except what the king's eunuchs, who was in charge of the women, advised. And Esther was finding favor in the eyes of all who saw her. So Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus in his royal palace in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. The king loved Esther more than all women, and she found favor and kindness with him more than all the other virgins, so that he set the royal turban on her head and made her queen in the place of Vashti. So Esther's made queen. It didn't go on all the details of how it happened. Look, you're stuck in a kingdom. You don't have a choice. This is the way he's going to do it. So this is what happened. So he held a great banquet, but he makes her king in place of Vashti. Also makes a holiday for the provinces and gave gifts in the proportion of the king's bounty. Now, when all the virgins were gathered together for the second time, then Mordecai was sitting at a king's gate. Esther still had not revealed her relatives or her people, just as Mordecai had instructed her. She hadn't given away that she's Jewish. For Esther did what Mordecai told her, just as she had went under his care. Now, this is an important little caveat because it has importance in a minute. In those days, while Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, he just hung out by the king's gate a lot. Bigthan and Teresh, two of the king's officials from those who guarded the door, became angry and sought to attack. So there's a plot on King Ahasuerus' life. They're mad at the king for some reason. Two of the king's officials. Looks like a coup, really. That's what it sounds like to me here. But the plot became known to Mordecai, and he informed Queen Esther. And Esther told the king in Mordecai's name. Basically, Esther told the king on behalf of Mordecai. Because we'll learn that the king didn't know it was Mordecai who exposed the plot. So Esther just, on behalf of Mordecai, told the king what was going on. Then when the plot was investigated and found to be real, they were both hanged on wooden gallows, and it was written in the book of the Chronicles in the king's presence. It's written in the book of the Chronicles, okay? That's important in a minute. Why did that happen? I hit the wrong, I clicked something. Now, let's see. So that's remember this plot that he exposed. Mordecai, let's start relating it to the modern day Iran. What's going on now? We have the Shah, who's deposed right now, but trying to come back, the king. And we have Esther always represents the people of Israel because of what she's going to do later in this story. But she represents the people. So like the nation of Israel is represented in her. And what does like Revelation 12 show? It shows that it shows Israel as a woman. I want to make it that point because Esther's a woman, but really, Israel's always called her like a wife of the Lord. It calls her in the Old Testament, the Lord's wife. Um, a woman clothed with the sun, moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars. This woman gives birth to a son, a male, who's going to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. So the woman is Israel. I just want to bring that out. So right now we have Israel trying to get rid of an evil faction called the IRGC, helping Israel, America helping them do that. And then we have people on the ground who's Mordecai representing in our modern age, modern Israel, but the Mossad. This guy was like hanging out, but at a low level, but picking up on plots and stuff, and then relaying that secretively to Queen Esther, and then she took it to the king and whatnot. But he's like a spy almost. So he's like Mossad right now. All right. So these are some of the relationships I'm seeing. And the Esther representing Israel is protecting the king of Persia, trying to keep him installed or, preserve his empire. And that's what Israel's doing for the Shah, who's in exile himself right now. It's almost a reverse. Israel was in exile back then, trying to protect the Shah. Now the Shah's in exile and Israel's trying to reinstall him. So it's like a give and take here, kind of reversal of history. But for real, it almost makes me think the book of Esther is potentially prophetic of our time. So after these events, King Ahasuerus honored Haman. Now Haman shows up as a new character here. And he's an idiot, okay, and promotes him in his step. Because what happens? The thing unsaid, but maybe what's going on is that Haman may be behind all this or taking advantage of it. He's definitely taking advantage because these other two guys were officials. It called them officials as well, and they tried to take him over. The king's officials had to try to do this coup, and then Haman is put in their place. Okay, and promoted him and established his authority over all the officials who were with him. All the king's servants who were at the king's gate bowed down and paid homage to Haman, for so the king had commanded regarding him. But Mordecai neither bowed down nor paid homage. So there's this Haman's got a little bit of hubris. He's a little prideful and he wants people to bow down to him. Mordecai isn't bound down to any human being. He only bows down to God, is the implication. You'll notice the book of Esther doesn't really mention God, but it's behind everything happening. Then the king's servants who were at the king's gate said to Mordecai, "Why are you violating the king's command? Because you're supposed to bow down to this Haman guy." Now it was when they had spoken daily to Mordecai, and he would not listen to them. Like every day, he's over and over not bowing down. They finally told Haman to see whether Mordecai's reason would stand. For he had told them that he was a Jew. The implication is what? The Jews wouldn't bow down to a mere man, only to God. When Haman saw that Mordecai neither bowed down nor paid homage to him, Haman was filled with rage, but he considered it beneath his dignity to kill Mordecai alone, for they had told him who the people of Mordecai were. So Haman sought to annihilate all the Jews. So Haman was, if anything is genocidal, that is. The people of Mordecai, who were found throughout the kingdom of Ahasuerus. So he had, like I said, there's this population of Jews throughout the whole Persian Empire, and he's calling for their total and complete annihilation because one of them wouldn't bow down to him. So he's like, I'm going to kill them all. In the first month, which is the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, Pur, that is the lot, was cast before. That's Purim. That's the origin of Purim. Okay, this is where I get crazy, but you have to put up with me. I've got to look that up. I got to do it in the right one. I'm in 3, I think. 7. This is the Hebrew word in the English that's translated from. Lot or peace, a special feast among the post-exilic Jews to celebrate their deliverance from Haman's destruction. Okay, it just means lot. And then they called it Purim. This means multiple. Im means is like is a plural. Pluralizes whatever's before it. So this is lots. Purim means lots. Lots. Like casting lots. Like whichever's the shortest stick is the one. So that's the idea here. Pure, that is, a lot was cast before Haman from day to day and from month to month until the 12th month. That is the month Adar. Then Haman said to King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered and dispersed among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from those of all other people. Yeah, they have the Mosaic law, right? And they don't. And so the implication is they don't comply with the king's laws. I think the real way to put, he's couching it in a very negative way, not telling the whole truth. I think they're fine with the king's laws unless they violate the Torah. So he's saying, but he's not saying it that way. He's saying they just don't comply with the king's laws. They got their own thing going on. That's always the implication against when anti-Semitism is brought up. Man, Tucker Carlson's doing that all day long. He is this Haman guy. Tucker Carlson is Haman. I swear to God. Because now I think Haman here is like, this is the really bad guy in this story. So he's the IRGC and what I'm seeing in the world. Like he would represent them. But anybody that supports their nonsense is a Haman as well, I would say. And this idea that we're not going to say the full truth. We're just going to say, we're going to make implications. We're going to say, well, if they want a third temple, they must want to destroy everybody and kill all the Muslims and destroy the Dome of the Rock and just take it all over. That must be what they want. Like they have this grand plot, which I don't think is fair, especially about the common people. Say what you want about the state and the guys at the top, but the common people aren't that way. But they're talked about that way all the time. They're saying, they do not comply with the king's laws. Well, they do up to the point where you tell them to do something that violates the Torah, like bowing down to a man. So it's not in the king's interest to let them remain. If it is pleasing to the king, let it be decreed that they be eliminated, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who carry out the king's business, to put into the king's treasuries. Then the king took his signet ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, the son of this guy, the enemy of the Jews. Tucker Carlson. And the king said to Haman, the silver is yours, and the people also, to do with them as you please. Then the king's scribes were summoned on the 13th day of the first month, and it was written just as Haman commanded. That they put it in a formal script in all the different languages that were out there, in the name of the king, and sealed with the king's signet ring. Letters were sent by couriers to all the king's promises to annihilate, kill, and destroy all the Jews, both young and old, women and children, in one day, the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to seize their possessions as plunder. A copy of I think the reason it's saying 13th day of the first month and 12th day of the 13th day of the 12th month is because it just so happened that I think Adar is like the added on month when there's like, when you every 3 or 4 years, they have to correct the calendar and put an extra month in to keep all the holidays, because it's a lunar calendar. And if you just keep it lunar, then all the holidays would shift throughout the seasons. Ramadan actually does that. It's the 9th month of the Islamic calendar, but it shifts throughout the seasons because it's a purely lunar and it doesn't have any correcting months after 3 or 4 years. But I think Adar was the one that corrected it. So it was kind of a 13th month, and this is called the next month, the first month. I think that's why it's discrepant here, but not really. It's because it's the month of Adar. A copy of the edict to be issued as law in every province was published to all the people so that they would be ready for this day. The couriers went out, speeded by the king's order, while the decree was issued at the citadel of Susa, and while the king and Haman sat down to drink. The city of Susa was agitated. It sounds really bad, right? So Mordecai sees this edict happen, and he learned it. He tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the midst of the city and wailed. And he came as far as the king's gate. No one was to enter the king's gate clothed in sackcloth. I'm making sure. Yeah. So he's again outside. I told you he's always outside the king's gate, and now he's in sackcloth. He can't even come in. They won't let him. There was great mourning among the Jews with fasting, weeping, and mourning. A lot of them have put on sackcloth. When you put on sackcloth, it's like it's bad clothes. It's kind of itchy, and it's to show how upset you are. And it's also a way to cry out to God. It's done by the prophets a lot in the Old Testament. Then Esther's attendants and her eunuchs came and informed her, and the queen was seized by great fear. And she sent garments to clothe Mordecai, so he would take off his sackcloth and come in. But he did not accept them. So she summoned one of the king's eunuchs and ordered him to go to Mordecai to learn what was going on. She hadn't seen the edict yet. So this guy, Hathach is this, or Hathach, he's the eunuch that's going back and forth between Esther and Mordecai here. So he goes out to Mordecai. Mordecai tells him everything that had happened to him and the exact amount of money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasuries for the elimination of the Jews. He also gave him a copy of the text of the edict, which had been issued in Susa for their annihilation, so he might show Esther and inform her, and to order her to go to the king to implore his favor and plead with him for a people. So basically Mordecai is telling, hey, go back, eunuch, go back and tell her, this is everything. Here's the proof. It's on this piece of paper so she can see it. And then I'm asking her to go ahead and ask the king not to do this. So Hathach came back and reported Mordecai's word to Esther. Esther spoke to him and ordered him to reply to Mordecai. All the king's servants and the people of the king's province know that for any man or woman who comes to the king in the inner courtyard who is not summoned, he held only one law, and that he or she be put to death, unless the king holds out to him the golden scepter so that he may live. I have not been summoned to come to the king for these 30 days, implying that if I go uncalled for, he may kill me. And they reported Esther's word to Mordecai. Mordecai, he gives another message back. This is a very important message. I really like it. Do not imagine that you in the king's palace can escape any more than all the other Jews. For if you keep silent at this time, liberation and rescue will arise for the Jews from another place, and you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not attained royalty for such a time as this? Two things in here. This is the famous verse. You've been appointed for such a time as this. That means like whatever happened in your life, if you think things are going badly, well, you have been put there by God for this time and this place to do something for his kingdom, however bad you think it is. You have been placed there by God. Look at things from a heavenly perspective, not earthly. Okay, that's great. Blessing. But also he said, don't you, so you think you're going to get killed by him if you do this. But if you don't do this, yeah, you may live for a little while, and all the Jews will get massacred and annihilated. But if you keep silent, one day the Jews will be avenged. A vengeance will come one day, and you may not live through that. So either way, you're going to die. Now, the word God's going to do it isn't mentioned here, but that's the implication, because that's what happened at the end of the 70 years of the Babylonian captivity. 70 years, and then the Persians came and did a vengeance on the Babylonians, which then allowed the Jews in captivity to go back home, those who would. Like I say, the vast majority did not go back, but those who would did. So, vengeance will come. He has faith that it will, and he's like, you're not safe. So Esther told it back to Mordecai, go, gather all the Jews who were found in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants also will fast in the same way. Then I'm going to go to the king, which is not in accordance with the law, and if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went away and did just as Esther commanded. So I don't think it's the 13th day of the month yet. She knows she has a little time. That's why she's instead praying and fasting. So after the third day of that prayer and fasting, she put on a royal robe, stood in the inner courtyard of the king's palace, and the king was sitting on his royal throne in the throne room, opposite the entrance. When the king saw Esther the queen, she just went there and stood. She didn't like barge in. But he's like, oh, something. She obtained favor in his sight. He's cool with it. And he extended his golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther approached and touched the top of the scepter. Then the king said to her, what is troubling you, Queen Esther? And what is your request? Up to half of the kingdom it shall be given to you, Esther said. That's just to basically say, whatever you want, I know something's bothering you, you'll get it. Esther said, if it pleases the king, may the king and Haman come this day to the banquet that I prepared. She set up a banquet. The king said, bring Haman quickly, so that we may do as Esther desires. So the king and Haman came to the banquet which Esther had prepared. As they drank their wine in the banquet, the king said to Esther, what is your request? For it shall be granted to you. And what is your wish? Up to half the kingdom it shall be done. So Esther replied, my request and my wish is, if I have found favor in your sight, if it pleases the king to grant my request and do what I wish, may the king and Haman come to the banquet which I prepared for them, and tomorrow I will do as the king says. Haman went out that day joyful and pleased of heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai at the king's gate, and that he did not stand up or tremble before him, Haman was filled with anger against Mordecai. Again, Mordecai is not doing what Haman wants. So this is not the banquet. She's got the banquet set up for later. And she's again telling them, y'all just need to come. So Haman has no idea what's in store for him here. And here he sees Mordecai again, not bound down to him. But he controlled himself and went to his house. But when he got home, he sent for his friend and his wife, Zeresh. This is Haman's wife. Haman told them of the glory of his riches and his many sons and every occasion on which the king had honored him and how he had promoted him above the officials and servants of the king. He said, even Esther the queen, let no one except me come with the king to the banquet. He doesn't know Esther's a Jew, even to this point. She's not revealed it. And he's like, even Esther asked me to. Haman's all about his own self. He's hubris, and he's prideful. And he's a narcissist, clearly. And he's taken everything toward himself in the most positive light possible. Even Esther the queen, let no one except me come with the king to the banquet which she has prepared. And tomorrow I'm invited by her with the king. Yet all this does not satisfy me every time I see Mordecai, the Jew, sitting at the king's gate. Then Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends said to him, get a wooden gallows 50 cubits high, and in the morning ask the king to have Mordecai hanged on it. Then go joyfully with the king to the banquet. And the advice pleased Haman, so he had the wooden gallows made. So his wife tells him, make some gallows to hang a guy on it. And during that banquet, hang Mordecai on it. So interestingly, what did way back at the time that the Iranian regime was killing up to 30 to 40,000, and maybe more probably, of the Persians or the Iranians, because they're not just Persian, there's a bunch of different types of Iranians. But the Iranians were out in the street and protesting, and they were getting shot and killed and put in body bags and all that. Well, they said they were going to hang them in the streets. And Trump said, if you hang them, we're going to attack you tomorrow. So they didn't hang them then, but it went dark. They cut off the internet, and they killed them anyway, but in the dark. And no one can see it because there's no internet coming out. And it didn't fool us. We just took our time to really go hard, like we're doing now, to end it, to get rid of the regime altogether, which will happen. Now, here we have a hanging as well, getting prepared. So, this is too many parallels, to our time. A lot of parallels. Now, during that night, there's the night waiting for the next day. The king could not sleep. So he wanted to review the records again. I don't know why he got this idea, but he's like, I'm going to review the records, the chronicles. Remember, I talked about the chronicles earlier? And in those chronicles, it recorded Mordecai's name being the Mossad agent that figured out the plot against him. Okay? And they were read before the king, and it was found written that Mordecai had reported about Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs, who were his doorkeepers, and they had sought to attack Ahasuerus. Then the king said, what honor or dignity has been bestowed on Mordecai for this? He's like, wait a minute. Mordecai did that? He should have been honored by now. Something great should have happened for him. What did y'all do for him? And the king's servants who attended him said, well, nothing's been done for him. The king said, Well, who was in the courtyard? Now Haman had just entered the outer courtyard of the king's palace in order to speak to the king about his point to come to the king was to hang Mordecai. He had to get permission, right? But it hadn't popped out of his mouth yet. He's just showing up right at the same time that this guy's been up, king's been up all night and is half tired, and just heard that Mordecai is like the greatest guy in the king's mind now because he saved his life. And in walks Haman. Haman's not privy to any of this right now. Okay? So the king's servant said to him, behold, Haman is standing in the courtyard. Have him come in. Haman then came in and said to him, what is to be done for the man whom the king desires to honor? That's the king. King said to Haman. So before Haman said anything about Mordecai, King's like, hey man, let me ask you a rhetorical question here, Haman. What would you do if the king wants to honor a dude? What would you do? What would you think would be a great way to honor the king? Haman said to himself, it means in his own brain. He's not speaking this out loud. Whom would the king desire to honor more than me? The guy's so narcissistic that in his own head, he thinks it's about him. And he's about to be gravely mistaken. Therefore, Haman said to the king, well, he hadn't given away that he thinks it about him. He's like, well, for the man, wink, wink, you know who we're talking about, king, right? For the man whom the king desires to honor, have them bring a royal robe, and which the king has worn. Yeah, one of your robes. And the horse on which the king has ridden, and on whose head a royal turban has been placed. Put a turban on the guy's head, the guy you want to honor. Then order them to hand the robe and the horse to the king's noble officials and have them dress the man whom the king desires to honor and lead him on horseback throughout the city square and proclaim before him. So it shall be done for the man whom the king desires to honor. Basically, show him off, let him wear all the king's clothes, and honor him that way. The king said to Haman, okay, take the robe and the horse you just have said, and do so for Mordecai the Jew, who is sitting in the king's gate. Do not fail to do anything, all that you said. Now, these guys don't question a king, right? So even though Haman's kind of pissed about it, he's going to do it. He's not really letting on that he's like, what? So Haman took the robe and the horse and dressed Mordecai. So Haman's having to do it to him. And led him on horseback to the city square and proclaimed before him, so it shall be done for the man whom the king desires to honor. Then Mordecai returned to the king's gate. Mordecai's like, what the heck is going on? While Haman hurried home mourning with his head covered. And Haman informed Zeresh, his wife, of all his and his friends of everything that had happened. Then his wise men and Zeresh, his wife, said to him, if Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall, is of Jewish origin, you will not prevail over him, but will certainly fall before him. Zeresh's wife just gives up. She's like, Mordecai, you're screwed. Now, if that just happened, that's almost like she's saying, the cosmic world is against you, man. The guy you hated is the one that the king told you to put the stuff on and give the honor. You're messed up. You're in trouble. While they were still talking, the king's eunuchs arrived and quickly brought Haman to the banquet. They're like, Haman, man, what'd you run off for? Like, you had a banquet. You're supposed to be coming to the banquet, and you ran off after that thing. Why'd you leave? Because he was all upset, right? But no one told him to leave. So the eunuchs came and brought him back. Now the king and Haman came to drink wine with Esther the queen. Haman's got to be there like stewing mad. And the king said to Esther on the second day also, as they drank their wine, this is a process, more than one day. What is your request, Queen Esther? It shall be granted you. And what is your wish? Up to half the kingdom, and it shall be done. Then Queen Esther replied, if I have found favor in your sight, O king, if it pleases the king, let my life be given me as my request, and my people as my wish. For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed. How sold? Because he said he would pay all that money. Haman said he would pay the money when they were killed. He put it in the king's treasury. Basically willing to pay for this to happen to him. We have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, killed, and eliminated. You could say genocided. Now, if we had only been sold as slaves, men and women, I would have kept silent. Because we're not dead, we're just slaves. Because the distress would not be sufficient reason to burden the king. These kings, man, you had to walk around paper thin, on glass, You had to walk real carefully around him. Then King Ahasuerus asked Queen Esther, who is he? And where is he who would presume to do such a thing, i.e., kill all the Jews? And Esther said, a foe and an enemy is the wicked man Haman. Then Haman became terrified before the king and queen. The king then got up in his anger the king is drunk again, and he's drinking wine, and he's angry, and went into the palace garden. But Haman stayed to beg for his life from Queen Esther, for he saw that harm had been determined against him by the king. And this is funny. He stays. The king barges off. Haman stays and is on his knees begging Queen Esther for mercy. When the king returns from the palace garden into the place where they had been drinking wine, Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was. He takes that as he is in his drunken fury. The king's like, that guy's going to rape her. Will he even assault the queen with me in the house? As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. Then this guy, one of the eunuchs, said, indeed, behold, the wooden gallows standing at Haman's house, 50 cubits high, which Haman made for Mordecai, who spoke good in behalf of the king. And the king said, hang him on it. So they hanged Haman on the wooden gallows, which he had prepared for Mordecai. And the king's anger subsided. That's the end of the story. So you'll see, like, Esther saves her people. She is on the side of the king. She represents her people, Israel. Judah, but Israel. And now today we have Israel saving the Shah again. And it's now the Shah in exile, not Israel in exile. Here, Israel's in exile. But God got her to the point of being a queen in order to put her in a place and a time in order to bring this miracle about, which saves the people. And Mordecai is the Mossad agent. And Haman is the IRGC trying to wipe him out. So there you go. The IRGC tries to wipe him out with Hamas and Hezbollah, whom they fund. So this whole story, which I wouldn't be making this connection had not the Epic Fury attack and what we're doing in Iran that started 2 days before Purim. Not only that, and it affects the same people group, the Iran, which was back here at Persia, but it's the same area of the world, and it's the same. There's a Shah involved, a king, and then there's Israel involved again, and there was a blood moon on that Purim, which celebrates. It's the festival now they do every year, this time of year, to remember all this. And it's going on in our time. I mean, if we're in the end times, then this is directly related. And it's signaled by God with a blood moon. Signal. That's the sign. There's signs in the heavens here talking to us. It's a sign that this is what's going on. We need to take it seriously. But yes, make the connection. When I see the blood moon on that Purim, like, what are the chances? It hits on a holiday. The same holiday that we go into war with the same people group that's persecuting the Jews that was in this day and age. And the same Shah that was had a plot to take his life, which did happen in 1979. That's the whole reason the IRGC is in place. It's just so many parallels, man. I think it's legit. So that's what I'm going to bring up tonight. We're living in extraordinary times. And I would highly advise you to take these, just to be thankful you're living during this time, that you can see these things and spread the truth about the Messiah, Christ incarnate, God incarnate in Christ, dying on the cross, because that's the world's only hope. And last thing, man, the symbol of Persia, the new flag, is going to have a lion on it. So I want you, and the Lion of the tribe of Judah is Jesus. I want to show you the two flags. IRGC flag. Let me see if this will. That's not right. It's this. That's the IRGC Iranian flag right now. It's swords. It's all swords and looks like it's aggressive. And the other one has a sword too, but the sword I'm going to show you is more defensive. This is very aggressive and offensive. Now, I'm going to see if that brings it up. Yep, it's this one. This is going to be the new flag. If what happens, happens. In a free Iran, this is a new flag. It's a sun rising over a lion who is holding a defensive sword, but it's not in the same way. And it's got the sun rising behind it, so it's like a rising lion, So it's two parallel. I mean, that lion figure meshing with the messianic times we're in, the second coming on the horizon. This is another picture from God that we are there, just to give us encouragement that it's close. All this is happening for a reason, so don't miss out on it. I'm going to leave it there. I think it's if you don't believe in Christ, you haven't put your faith in Him, you should.